Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at SwordCraft, in particular a mid-range variant. This is not a fully optimized deck, we'll get that right out of the way to start with. Optimally you want to run a few more legendaries, 3 of the other low cost drop. Omen, she does a wonderful job at dealing with last word effects. Of course another Aether, another Sky Saber and another Latham. Unfortunately I blacked those cards, so about 6 legendaries I'm lacking. I did fill those slots in by rounding up a few cards like Chromatic Duel and stuff up to a bit higher cost, adding in some Princess as I thought she would be an okay benefit, and really just filling out other slots, adding in Marksman, things like that, which I thought were still reasonably solid cards and still fit that nice Aether into big drops, which is exactly what you're going to be aiming for most of the time. So we're going to get right into this and check it out. So the couple of games we have today are against Dragon. It seems to be quite a common matchup when you're playing rotation right now, so it was hard to really face much else with this deck. I had about 6 or 7 games with this deck overall, and I think nearly every single win was against Dragon, at least any wins that showed off the deck decently, otherwise it was immediate concedes for some others. So there wasn't really much point including those ones. So starting off strong with a turn 1 play is always what I like to do. Sometimes I will just throw Rapier Master if I don't have anything else, as getting something on board turn 1 is usually much more favoured for me than doing anything else. And really they're just dealing with them, which is fine at the moment I guess. There's not really a lot I can do against it, so we kind of just have to deal with it. Ivory Sword Dance is actually quite an amazing card when you can get it to go off. A lot of people are considering it quite overpowered in combination with things like Leod. I think it's definitely a solid card, and one that I aspire to try and use more often if I can. Snare of Disdain though is definitely going to be rough to deal with that, so throw down a Queen Herma and pretty much throw the Evo out at this point, since all I can do is be aggressive from here on. Our opponent's taking things a little slow, which is good on our end, not so good on theirs, so may as well take full advantage of any aggressive cards we can play. Since we can actually fill this board even more, we're going to have a very quick game here with Despair's Messenger dealing 7 damage on this turn, and allowing us to of course restock our hand, which is a massive advantage. So it's no real shock on the way that goes. Our opponent went for Jabberwock Nightmare, which is definitely not a fun card to go up against here, especially once it's at 15. Trying to find a way to deal with it though would be nearly impossible. Fortunately it didn't kill off anything too dangerous, so we were able to just straight up win the game. So I'm hoping our second Dragon game was a little longer, and from memory I think it was. I think this is the one that actually was fairly drawn out overall. If not, this is just going to end up being a little bit shorter video than I initially expected. So I did hold on to the Rapier Master as my turn 1 play. Again, a lot of people don't like to use it like that. I'm just different in some cases, where I like to use it as a much more aggressive card than a defensive late game card where people will combo it with Latham and look for big burst damage. In most situations I like to use it aggressively, going forward as fast as possible and getting that damage in where it matters in the early game, so I don't have to worry about that late game section where I could potentially just get completely screwed over. Similar reason on why I play the 1-3 ambushes, as they're quite good offensively and defensively, which actually kind of makes up some ground for me. So Fatal Spellbomb is actually going to be a nice way to deal with the 2-3 in the future, if of course they don't decide to trade. Dragon Wings dealing 1 to everything, and Disdainful Rend. Okay, impressive way to deal with most of this board. I don't really have a lot else I can do here that's going to be great, other than I guess Fatal Spellbombing, the 1-2 to stop it from killing off Marksman immediately. So really what else was there other than just passing the turn, which I'm really not a fan of doing at that point. So they're going for another Righteous, so that means they have got at least a couple of decent cards out of those. And our turn 5 is not looking great. We can really only do so much here, and Dealing with our opponent's board is not the way I like to play this deck. As you've probably noticed by now, I don't really like favouring board clears with this, so I really like to do one big clear than wasting a bunch of small materials. At least now, hopefully we can start taking the initiative. Forcing them into the trades instead would be good. I went for Gilded Necklace just to add a little bit more squish to this so that it of course won't die immediately to most things, and turns out I think I made the right choice because this is going to be a 1-for-1 trade now, even though I think it probably would have been to start with, but basically a guaranteed 1-to-1 trade. I decided to go for Strategist. Going wide and setting up a pre-evo just in case they do end up having another way to get rid of most of these. At least this way I can kind of protect her and set up for an Ivory sword dance next turn. Fortunately, that didn't quite work out. So that's a little bit of a disappointment there. I mean, at least we have a few decent ways to go for cards now. I mean, we've protected these 2 drops, which is going to be okay, and if they force the Evo out on this one, we've got another chance. So it's not the end of the world, it's just going to be a little tougher. Which I'm actually okay with. Honourable Knight is also not bad, even though I'm pretty much going to be sacrificing him here. Since this is the only way we could really start going for lethal now, was to get Honourable Knight out and really start swinging the game in our direction. And that's not good. That means they are going to start healing a bit now, which is definitely not an advantage to us. At least we can at least clear this off using Apostle. And Ivory Sword Dance, which is going to be actually fairly decent. We shouldn't have to worry about them playing that again, so healing up shouldn't be as easy now, excluding of course Scorpion of Greed. Hellbeast though is definitely a rough outcome for us. Sky Saber, kinda actually haven't got to use much, so definitely glad I got to play that. Especially since in this situation she actually gains 2 followers out of this, and that's actually amazing. If I had have thought it through a little bit more though, I could have went for another Sky Saber and set up an even wider boards, but I think holding on to one is probably okay. And an Evo on the Leod for some little bit of extra damage in is not the worst situation, and just go a little wider. Might be a bit risky, but we've already seen a few ways to remove boards. I've only really got one left to do a mass board removal, or at least one easy way to do it. At some point I had to decide to take some risks. Since we do have Twilight Blade, which is actually okay. That's 5 damage to everything, which if I use that correctly, I could just wipe this board right now instead. But if I use things even better, I can actually go for lethal, so we may as well aim for that now. So we get a perfect lethal here for 11 damage. I was a little worried about only getting 10, but once that was all worked out, it did end up adding just that 1 extra, which was perfect. So even with a slightly unoptimized version of Midrange Sword, it's still an extremely solid deck for the current meta situation, and it's no real surprise as it does run a lot of really good cards. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. You'll find a link to this deck in the description below. Until next time, see ya.